Welcome to What God Can Do. Today we have a very interesting program for you. We have guests from the British Pakistani Christian Association. We have with us Wilson Chowdhury, Atiq Chowdhury and Alex Chowdhury. We also have with us Bishop Michael Reid, who is the founder of What God Can Do Ministries and the Bishop of the Global Gospel Fellowship. Welcome. We're going to talk today about persecution in Pakistan because Christians have been persecuted. Bishop, why don't you start us off?
Well, the real thing is introducing our guests, because you for a long time have watched what's happening. The horror of it is that the Christian church in this country seems ignorant of what's going on, really. The government's ignorant, and we need to bring it to the awareness of people that the terrible persecution. I've got friends over there, and they actually live in a house where an imam has his prayer room down below and they live above, and they've been teaching, and they went out to teach. And what has happened is that there's radicalization of the Muslims, but so often it's pitched that every Muslim is the same, and that's where the trouble starts, because there are good Muslims who have a belief in a peaceful way of living and coexistence, and then there's the violent, hateful ones who believe in the destruction of every Christian. And unfortunately, they become, when you get a bad leader, they become a very vociferous, violent, persecuting lot. And a pastor and his sister were murdered, and they accused them of blasphemy, totally falsely. Would you like to say something about it?
Yeah, I mean, just recently there have been a number of incidents that have happened very similar to what you're speaking about. There was the incident about a year ago in a place called Korea, where a whole Christian kind of village, you could say almost a part of a town, was surrounded and was razed to the ground with, I think it was 7 to 9 people dying. I can't remember the exact number now. And that really, those people had lived together for years. But what had happened was there was a false claim of blasphemy against someone within the village, and the local imams had incited a crowd from their mosques who would normally be, as you said, quite peaceful people, not necessarily wanting to go out and do this kind of damage, but raising tempers, raising emotions within people, who were then sent to this particular part of that town and reduced it to a rubble, and in the process killing, like I said, this number of people. The issue for me is that's not a solitary story.
No.
And it's a continual story.
Well, I think what will be interesting is for the viewers to understand how widespread it is and how common it is.
Well, I have to say that a lot of it actually is concentrated within an area of Pakistan, and that's within the Punjab province of Pakistan. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't events and things that happen in other provinces. Certainly in Sindh there are things that happen, especially in Karachi and in the smaller towns. But the majority, and in the Northwest Frontier province, of course, where the Taliban have increasingly come to power in recent days. But the issue really is mainly within the Punjab area. And so one of the things that we as an organisation, the British Pakistani Christian Association, did was lobby Punjab Assembly members when they've been over here and otherwise around some of those atrocities. One, asking for recourse for those that have suffered, the victims, etc., but also asking for justice, because at some point in time Pakistan will have to live up to its blasphemy laws, because they do actually provide a form of protection, and unfortunately that protection is not currently being given to the minorities.
That's partly because, of course, the Shia courts and what they're doing is the courts, Muslim courts, very often when they get into blasphemy laws, and therefore the prejudice is so much against Christians, that they can bring false evidence like they did in this last case of you know, a handwritten letter, and then claimed it was copied, and it wasn't. I mean, it was just false.
If I can just add something
Yeah.
to that as well. I mean, this blasphemy law in itself obviously creates a second-class citizenship for any minority faith group, and that's extended in the Northwest Frontier province by the rule of the Taliban, who are actually exerting jizya taxes
Yeah.
on minority faith groups also. So it's a lot worse than it would just seem. It's not just these major persecution incidents. There is regular persecution in specific areas. Generally, it doesn't happen in the major cities, but it can. It generally happens in the less educated areas, the poverty-stricken areas in the villages. I mean, if we're going to find a resolution, there's one thing in particular with the blasphemy law is a ongoing concern, is, as you kind of alluded to, the lack of proper investigation into blasphemy cases and the lack of protection to those that have been accused of blasphemy. In the recent event in Wadiskura, the two individuals that were accused of blasphemy were actually acquitted because the police had corroborated that the evidence provided was whimsical at best. However, what has transpired is these individuals were shot after becoming free men within just minutes. To
Yeah,
date,
after walking out.
exactly, and yet to date, justice has not prevailed, and nobody has been arrested for the actual murder of these two individuals. That's what we're hoping for. A better enforcement, better investigation, safekeeping of those prisoners. After the prisoners were shot dead, one of the stark reminders of how bad the policing is in Pakistan was the fact that the two individuals had marks on their faces and bodies that couldn't have happened from the shooting. That's police brutality.